shift to the other screen. And hopefully everything seems to be okay.
Yeah, looks good. I don't think we're audible on this. Okay, now we are audible on the stream.
You can start, Nanditi.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today. We welcome everybody, and we are excited to have you all with us as we kick off our How To series, fittingly with its first session with TED, Learning How to High Five. And a very warm and enthusiastic welcome to you, Ted, on behalf of HY5, on behalf of code.yatra cohort and the entire Code Drift community. Many members of the community are here with us on the Google Meet. And we have been looking forward to meeting you and high-fiving together ever since we started using Hi-Fi Live and Hi-Five in our workshops and performances with Code Drift. And many of our performances have been saved because of P5 Live co-coding as well, where any performer is not able to be there because of some reason in real life, but has still performed live using a co-coding session with a computer on stage. So that's been great, and thank you for it. Before we hand it over to Ted, just a few quick introductions about Code Yatra and the how-to gatherings for our friends who would join on the YouTube live stream or watch it later. Code Yatra is an expanded natural progression of our Code Drift journey. And Code Drift has been an initiative developed by HY5, which is the small creative tech studio that Computational Mama and I, Nanditi, run since 2019. And this is a creative coding practice that we have been building over the past 2 to 3 years. I'll just share my screen quickly to share with everybody what's been going on with Code Drift. And I think even Ted, it'd be nice for you to see as well. So Code Drift began as a creative coding practice as well as a beginner-friendly workshop on creative coding by Computational Mama and myself to look at Sonic Pi and P5 Jazz as the primary tools, but primarily also bring the idea of the city and the situated knowledge as well as our lived experience in the city along with the creative coding practice. So what we would do is we would go on a drift around the city and use that as an anchor for creative exploration, and then bring that into our live coding practice. So this allowed us to open up the format to everybody coming from all kinds of backgrounds, not necessarily tech, not necessarily music or art, but everyone, because it became very accessible. And here are just some snapshots of the workshops we've been doing with Code Drift and the city explorations that we've been doing. And then naturally, it became a large community of artists and technologists who are now, doing a lot of performances as well, and these kind of sessions and workshops together. And recently this year, it has taken the form of Code Yatra along with a fellowship with the Godrej Design Lab in India, where Code Yatra allows us to take Drift to various cities and expand in terms of the people we can reach out to, how we can spread the practice to more kind of creators and build hybrid practices around it, and always keeping city as the anchor of the practice. So that's what we've been up to, and it's become a very fun, accessible format for everybody. A lot has been happening at Code Yatra just a few glimpses of already our travels around India to do various workshops with different groups and trying different formats around live coding. I'll just give a glimpse, and I think it would speak for itself. And then we can just, move on to our fun part. So yeah, this is what we've been up to with Code Yatra till now. And apart from just going through all the cities and spreading this practice around, we are also doing this online parallel to make sure that we can also have engagements with live coding practitioners around the world, and even expand the community to wherever that we can. So yeah, that's the brief about what we've been up to with Code Yatra, and these are the how-to sessions that allow us to run the online parallel. And I think from here on, I would give to Ambika to introduce TED, and then we can get to high-fiving.
Oh my God, thank you. We're so honored to have you, Ted. It's been really amazing to see all the lovely tools that you've been throwing out to us, and we've been really catching them quite a bit here at Code Drift, Code Yatra, and all the other live coding things that are happening in India. And I'll just introduce Ted, and then I will just totally shut up, and then we'll let him talk. And thanks again, Ted, for agreeing to do this. We are very, very thrilled to have you. Ted Davis is a media artist, designer, educator, originally from the United States and now based in Basel, Switzerland. Since 2010, he teaches interaction design and coordinates the UIC Hergerke International Master of Design program with the within the Visual Communication Institute. The Basel School of Design, I'm just going to say it normally, HGK, FHNW. His work and teachings explore the volatility of digital media through glitch and reactivating older new media through newer programming means. His open source projects, Basel.js, HY5 Scope, P5 Live enables designers to program within Adobe InDesign, render vector graphics on vector displays, and collaboratively create live coded visuals. Within international exhibits, lectures, and workshops, he empowers students to take hold of the computer's ability to design possibilities beyond that of the hand or mouse. So with that, I'll leave it to you. Thank you, Ted.
Great. Thank you so much, Ambika Nanditi, for the invitation. It's amazing to see the community that you've built there, and super fun to see this overview of events that have taken place. And of course, it's really fun to see screenshots, and I can see like a little bit in the corner of like a P5 Live interface. And so it's always super fun to know that the tools are being used. I build these tools first for myself to do exactly what I want it to do. And then it's amazing when it finds resonance and can be useful out there in the wild. And so it's really fun to see all these events, and thanks for sharing them over time. So let me jump right in and present my screen, my whole window here. A moment of feedback. And we'll jump right to this screen. And so I think many of you are familiar with P5 Live, but I'll just give a super quick intro for uninitiated of what these different tools are, and then we'll focus on High5. So P5 Live is like so, and it stems from, I won't give the whole presentation about P5 Live, but it stems from 2019 when we hosted a processing community day in Basel, and we wanted to have live coded visuals in the evening. We had heard about algo raves, and we had seen amazing things online, but we didn't have any of the tools to do that. And we were really focused on processing, and we're getting into P5 at the time. And so I realized, hey, we could build a little hacky editor, just making a text area full screen sitting over P5 JS running full screen. That way we could really do this algorave style code over our visuals, see everything big, and then we could VJ and perform with it. And that's became this tool that I've been working on for the last, almost 6 years now, called P5 Live, which, as you mentioned, has a number of features built into it. Coding came out before the pandemic as just kind of a fun, hey, we have Google Docs, Etherpads, let's code together. And then it became super important during the pandemic to be able to code with one another. It's also great for performances. Super nice to hear that you've been using it for remote presence in a performance. I've also given performances with Sabrina Verhaag at one of the ICLCs, the International Conference for Live Coding, where we were on stage, but live code opened the room, co-code opened the room, so anyone in the audience could also be on stage with us coding. Recoding lets you record your coding performance. You mentioned that as well, that you've been using that, and it's a really fun way of just capturing your process. I usually forget to do it, but I love it when I remember to press that button and it just captures all your keystrokes so that you can go back and remix yourself, because it's super fun just to have every single little change that we make captured. Because I think the big part of creative coding is that you can just change your mind, try something out, try the next thing. And all the time you go to like something better or worse, and it was better or worse back in the past, and you lost it, or you can't undo, or you just want to keep going forward. And then it's amazing to capture that whole process, and then you can scrub through it and jump back and keep remixing yourself from maybe a third into the performance or sketch. And then we have all the sketches here, just to be able to keep track of all our stuff. There's all kinds of other little things built in. There's fun chalkboards that we can use to explain stuff and draw on our code. Built-in references so that if you forgot how some functions work, you can look it up while you're performing. So that's P5 Live, and this has been around for a while. I'll jump back to it at the end of the presentation. And I just want to talk about, got into live coding with P5.js around 2019, because processing and P5 were sort of my main tools of entry to creative coding. And so this enabled me to do live coding with those tools, plus all the libraries that are out there really expand possibilities. And then at the same time of making P5, when I was making P5 Live, Hydra had just come on the scene maybe a year earlier from Olivia Jack, and I was blown away by what was possible in the browser with just a couple lines of code. And I always loved the rich, wild, organic feel that Hydra could create. And so I was experimenting with both, and then I was pretty quickly obsessed with what about mixing the two together, because P5 lets you really compose anything on the page with type and shapes and 3D and everything. And Hydra lets you do so many organic, morph, manipulation, modulations, everything, but it's less of a composition tool. You can, but it's limited. And so I really saw the power of both of those things talking to each other to sort of break each other's realm of possibilities and become stronger with both. And so in conversation with Olivia Jack, we started figuring out and hacking ways to send P5 into Hydra and get Hydra into P5. And so these were some examples that I had inside of, make the code a little smaller, examples inside of P5 Live that have been around for some years, where it was like how you could play with Hydra inside of P5 Live. And what it involved was you'd have to load the library. So it loaded it, when you load libraries in P5 Live, you just say let libs, and then you make an array of as many libraries as you want. And I typically load both the online, the CDN, Content Delivery Network version, and an offline version. Because the whole point of P5 Live is that you can run it offline without internet in a club or basement. Everything works without the internet. And so for all of these demos, I always have a copy of it inside the P5 Live folder so that it could load without internet. So you'd have to load Hydra, and then you would build a mini canvas on the fly. Everything you do in P5 Live is actually compiling into an iframe. So it's like dynamically building a little website in the background. and then running the code in there. And so we can inject additional canvases in there. And so I could inject a mini canvas, tell it to be either the full window size or lower res. I could say start Hydra. This is a really special thing. I'll talk more later. We have to make an alias of Hydra's noise function. Hydra noise is amazing, but P5 also has noise as a global word, and they go, and one of them overwrites the other. And so with Hydra, I like to write it with a Z to use their noise. But basically, you would initiate Hydra. I invented something in P5 Live called a sandbox, where if you make changes to this space here, it doesn't cause a hard compile to refresh all the page, because it's just like, this is in the sandbox space, let's just evaluate this block of code. And so it lets you play and try things out. You can try things out without triggering P5 compiles. And then you'd have to invent a layer to hold the Hydra graphic on. And then this was the crazy hack that Olivia Jack knew how to do. I didn't know anything about this, that you take a layer and then you can tell it's drawing context to draw an image and draw the Hydra canvas. This is like canvas, plain canvas magic, or you can say like, hey, take the image from that canvas, put it on that canvas, and then we could bring Hydra into P5, and I could draw a sphere, I could draw a torus rather, I could draw a sphere that's 200, or a box that's 400. So I could use that texture from Hydra on. And so there's a bunch of demos. Let me see, Hydra. There was an example to deal with that issue for the noise overlap called scoping. You could have multiple Hydras, but that got really complicated because you'd have to basically create that many canvases for Hydra. So in the end, you're really building 3-4 separate canvases, which isn't so nice to the computer. And then you have to use that scoping. You have to put the word of the instance of Hydra before all your Hydra code. And this gets really, really confusing for students to know like when and where do I need to say each of those different instances. It's on the generators and such. And so that was possible. It was awesome. It always came up as a question, how to have multiple Hydra, but it wasn't so friendly, I guess, user friendly. And then there was an example of overlay to go the other way, to send P5 into Hydra. Here I could tell Hydra to init the source of P5's canvas. And this is like complicated things. It's not so bad, but if you're live coding, to try and remember this stuff or to type it in was really not so user-friendly. And so what I started thinking was, and then feedback is fun, to go the whole route around, to like send Hydra into P5 live, and then send that graphic back out to Hydra to get crazy feedback, because it's really fun to play with feedback in both environments. And so I started thinking, especially when I was teaching with this, I started teaching more and more Hydra to get students into visuals, and then we'd switch to P5, and then we would mix the two together. And I just realized students were having all kinds of hiccups when doing these examples to like merge the things together. And so I started thinking, what if we made that whole bridge between the two tools happen in the back end? There's no reason we have to see, when I go to like this texture at the top, there's no reason I need to type that in every time to create a canvas and tell the two to link to each other and build a layer. That kind of stuff could just happen in the back end because it's the constant code that you never need to edit. And then you just get to quickly run and play with code. And so maybe I'll show the examples in P5 Live in a minute. I'll just remind you, there's online and offline version of P5 Live, and this tool, Hi5 Live, I'll show you. So it's really important to me that all of these work offline so that you don't need internet. So it's quick and easy to, like in a workshop, I always have people jump online and use the online version. And then you run into limitations of you have to have internet. It's trickier to load assets because you have to host the asset somewhere on the internet. And you can't play with things like OSC, Open Sound Control, which is probably exactly what you play with or could play with for the connection for audio with Sonic Pi, with digital instruments. There's so many interesting things to do with Open Sound Control. And for that, you need to be in offline mode. So it's really easy to install offline mode. You just have to have Node.js and NPM installed. And then you download the package from GitHub and just say install and start, and then you're offline and you can load all your own assets. One of the biggest things for both of my tools, Hi5 Live and P5 Live, is all of your sketches and savings live in the browser. It was really important to me. I didn't want to deal with saving people's sketches or being responsible for storing their stuff. And so everything is in what's called local storage. I can just quickly open it up and show you. If I go application, local storage, I can see all my sketches living in there. In P5 Live, it's not quite as clean as I figured out how to do in Hi5 Live. I was learning. But the whole point of that is make sure you back up your stuff. It's really easy in both programs to tell it to automatically back up your sketches. You can just hit backup. You can always download your sketches. And this is really important to do if you like to clear your browser settings. If you like to clear your browser history, then stuff will go away. So you just make sure you hit backup all the time. My caveat, because I also like that things are offline. I don't know what your sketches are. You do. It's on your computer. And so you just have to make sure you keep them safe. When you install offline P5 Live, what's really nice is it downloads every time you've been working for a day. It puts it in the P5 Live folder, in a folder called backups. And so that way, if your browser ever crashes, computer crashes and such, you have a file you can just drag and drop back into the browser and bring everything back. Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time in there, but just to remind you and use these tools how to save your work. So I started realizing it would be really nice to have a bridge to put the sketches, the things together. And actually it started, I just remembered, the whole thing started by wanting to make a little gallery tool for my students to show their homework of Hydra. And so this tool started as like Hydra Gallery, where you could drag and drop a bunch of Hydra sketches, and then it would just load them as a little gallery. And then you could do like a show and tell and look at each other's work. And then I started realizing I'm a huge fan of this ACE editor. There's different text editors in the browser. Hydra and the P5 editor like to use code.yatra. And I've always been a fan of ACE editor because it has little shortcuts I'll show you that are really fun for live coding. And so I started making like an alternative editor that used ACE as the background. And I'll show you what that does. And then as I started to build that, then I realized, hey, I'm building another little mini tool. Why don't I put all that Hydra P5 bridges in the background? And then what that did is it made it possible to make a super, super limited, fast, let's get sketching editor, where basically I have my Hydra code and I have my P5 code, and it all can be written globally, it's called, where you just use the functions as they are without a word in front of it. And so I have like, there's special things you type in front to talk to P5 or to talk to Hydra, because there's special things to turn the layer on and off. But I wanted to make it really fast to like jump into those things. Actually, what I realized I need to show you before I get into Hi5 Live, I just remembered Hi5 meta. Here we go, meta. I just realized I need to show you the meta of what Hi5 is doing. And I have a blue background. This is a feature, not a bug. If you play with P5 Live, you'll notice sometimes your background sticks from a previous sketch. And that's because I set the whole web page's background to that color. to make sure when you refresh the page, you never have like a splash of white or so. So once you write background once, I'll make it black now. Now, like my page will always be black. So P5 sort of adapts itself to whatever your first background call was. And that way we never see that little flash every time you have to like do a hard recompile, because that's, yeah, in the first version that happened. And every time I was live coding in the very first performance on a big LED wall, the whole audience got a huge flash. And then I realized, oh no, we need to fix that. So just keep that in mind. You write background once, and then the whole website has that color. So this is what Hi5 is about. We have Hydra, and then I'm going to put on a P5 sketch. This is a layer. This is like a little meta sketch I made to explain what's happening. And so this is where the power of these two things come together. I have a Hydra oscillator with a bit of noise happening in the background. I have a P5 sketched with some circles moving. And then what's amazing is using that Hydra layer to modulate the P5 layer. And so basically I'm just telling this like, hey, that's my P5 sketch, that's my Hydra sketch. Bring the two together and let's modulate P5 by Hydra. And that's where you break the like crisp and clean quality of P5 with just a couple lines of code. You quickly get into like a whole different domain of possibilities. And so I'll hide those and show you the other way. What's super interesting is then I could take that texture from Hydra and with one line of code, bring it into P5 and say, I want to use it as a texture. And that's super nice because we can generate really, really wild, trippy visuals in Hydra and then just use them as textures on a 3D environment. And then we can also quickly get 4 textures out of Hydra. I'll show you that as well. And then what gets really fun, I'm going to turn that one off and turn this one on, doing like a feedback of all the things together. So this real quick, what happens if I turn that off for a sec, just to be weird. This is like a layer of feeding them all back into each other. And I love visual feedback. And so this is like P5 going into Hydra, coming back to P5. And then you get to play with, we're basically playing with feedback just of that little title and this frame. That's all the thing sees. But it's being modulated through noise. And yeah, feedback takes me to places I never could have imagined going. So I'm a huge, huge fan of any kind of feedback system. So that is what's happening. I'm going to leave it for myself how it starts. That's what basically Hi5 is doing. And I'll put it on a new sketch so it's not using any resources. So like I was explaining here, let me start it over real quick. I have the ability to basically just say in Hi5, all I have to say is S0. I'm guessing quite a few of the people in the community know about Hydra. So I'm just going to talk fairly quick on some of the aspects of it. But we have 4 source inputs. And so we can tell it to use images or video or our webcam or other canvases. And so you have 4 of these things, S1, 0 through 3. And all you have to do is type init P5, and then that grabs whatever the P5 canvas is doing. And so in this case, I'm drawing a circle. And so this circle, I'm going to quickly show you the P5 sketch and go h.toggle to hide there. So this is my P5 sketch. Like that's all I'm doing in P5 is just drawing a circle without a background. And then what I can do really fast here is I can say P5, toggle yourself on or off, or I can say show and hide. So there's P5, I'll hide it, and then I'll say Hydra, show yourself. And so this is then my P5 source being fed into Hydra, oops, and then I'm modulating it with noise. And so I get this, or I can modulate it with an oscillator, and then I get this, or I can modulate it with Voronoi, and then I get something broken like that. Yeah, so I can really quickly do just like I can, and maybe if I even do a small number like 1, then it's just kind of wobulating my P5 sketch without too much distortion. Or modulate scale, whoa, starts to do that kind of in 3D. I can quickly show you what is it modulating by. It's this. So like this is what I'm using to bend my P5 sketch. And so what's super nice is like in Hydra, you could always play with P5 in the Hydra editor, but because of these conflicts, it had to be scoped. And so you had to do like you had to write the word P5 in front of all of your P5 setup stuff, and then it could get kind of funky if it got compiled multiple times on the setup. And especially for students, I just love it when things can be globally written. I'm just such a fan of when you don't need to avoid this scoping. It took me a while to understand what scoping was back when I was getting into all this, but it's just the ability to have global typing without a word in front of all the stuff so that libraries don't conflict with each other. It's just really user-friendly when you can see your P5 code and you can see your Hydra code, and then this is the HY5 stuff to like decide some things between them. And so I started developing HY5 live, and it was partly just to build a mini editor because P5 Live became this big tool with co-coding and recoding and all kinds of fancy features. And something I always loved was also the Hydra editor is so minimal. Like I also really liked at times that you just had code and you have a few functions at the top here. And I mean, at times I wish you could save things, or there's certain things that would be great to have, but it's also so minimal that I really appreciate how there's not stuff that gets in the way and you just focused on coding. And so with HY5, I kind of wanted to recreate that and make it as small as possible. And then it kind of snowballs and you need to add a feature. But I also wanted to approach the way sketches work in a different way, which I'll explain in a minute. Maybe I'll wait a sec. That you basically create little templates for yourself that you can remix without overriding them. But maybe I'm jumping too far ahead. Maybe I just quickly show you a couple more examples that come out of the box just to show how this works. And so this is a P5 sketch. Maybe something that I can do is to show you what it looks like on its own. Let's see, I can duplicate the line. Does that work? There we go. So this is my P5 sketch. It's just the word HY5 live with a circle that's kind of inverting, differencing the text. And then I do some super fun adding of the output of Hydra. That's already a feedback system with a bit of zoom or a lot more zoom or even more zoom or tons of zoom or no zoom, like zooming in, then it's the opposite. And so I'm modulating some tons of noise on there. That's if I only have a little bit of noise. And so it's just so nice. I get to work so fast on the Hydra code. I get to work so fast on the P5 code, and there's nothing else in the way. And I can toggle my P5 code on or off to see it or not. I can play with the pixel density. Is interesting. Most of us are working with Retina displays, so it's actually double the pixels than we see. So things are sharp. By default, it's not double displayed, also to be nicer to your computer because you're running two canvases. But you can also do super fun lo-fi stuff because I can tell the pixel density of Hydra to now just be 1/10 of my actual display size, or 1%, super lo-fi graphics. So there's really interesting, like if you like low res, crunchy graphics, retro, Atari looking things, you can really easily create this. Or you can say, I like really sharp graphics, my computer can handle it. So that's an example of sending, again, P5 into Hydra. Here is kind of the same thing, but just doing some other changes. I think I just liked both demos and I wanted 2 demos. This is already a demo of going one into the other, but I'm going to skip that for a minute and show you the opposite way of sending. Yeah, pixel density. Super. I see the chat kind of popping in. It's super fun to play with fractions of pixel density. You can also do it in P5, although it's usually anti-aliased and soft unless you play with layers and no smooth. And so what's super nice is doing that really fast, making a texture in Hydra and passing it into P5. And so what I do here is I have a gradient. I'll turn off a bunch of stuff. So that's like just a gradient. And then I'll show you as I add it up. That is modulate some scale. And then this is blending some scale. Let me move this up and see if it makes a difference, or I'll add one line of code, pixelate, and show you why I really like this ACE editor. So I just drew a line of code, and in this editor, I just have my cursor on that line, and I can press Option up to move a line of code around. And that's what's super interesting about Hydra is it makes such a difference. It's a modular synthesizer, and so it makes such a difference where you put these different functions. So if I also do something like maybe dot collide and put that somewhere else in the stack, different things happen. 44, so it's there, or it's there, or it's there, or it's there. And then you can hold down Option while you do that, Option and Command, and you duplicate the line of code. And so then you can move it down there and have it in both places. Or you can always take like a whole chunk of code. If I have this here, I can highlight 2 lines of code and move them as a block around. And so I love this option up, down, especially in Hydra, because I love to just like test which is the better order, here or here. The same in P5. It also makes a difference there. If you rotate one axis before the other axis makes a difference. So that's one of my favorite features of ACE editors, just this shifting lines up and down. But what I'm doing here is just drawing some Hydra, and then I'm telling P5's Z index. So this is a bit of CSS code. You can also just write Z for being fast and writing only one character. But the Z axis is this like which order of layers in HTML, which elements are in front of which element. And so we can decide to say -1. Now P5 is behind the Hydra canvas. Or I want to see P5, and so I say be in front of the Hydra canvas. I haven't turned off Hydra. Here with H toggle 0, I can disable the Hydra canvas and say, I don't want to look at the Hydra canvas. I just wanted to make a texture and use it in P5. But a lot of the time, it's nice to have both. So it's like if you are drawing without a background, you can play with transparency. And so what I'm doing is here, I just need one line of code, h.get, and that grabs whatever Hydra is doing. It takes the Hydra canvas and turns it into a layer, this thing I showed you before, and then it's a layer that's available inside of P5. Here I'm using it directly as the texture, but if I wanted to use it multiple times, like say I also wanted to have an image of it, then what I can do is just call the function, and it produces by default a value called H0. That's the name of the layer. And the reason I said H0 is that it's Hydra. So it's like Hydra likes to use S for source, O for output, and I'm using H for Hydra. And so we basically, by default, can call it H0, but you can also give it a custom name in there. I could call it Hydra text. And now I need to write Hydra text, and that is the texture. So I can give it a custom name for the layer if I like. There's special instances when you want to do that. But by default, I would just leave it as it is. And I have this image basically called HO now, where I could also say, I want to see that image. I'll turn off the box for a sec, and there is that Hydra as an image. Why would you do that? Weird feedback. It's super fun to be grabbing the Hydra, showing it as an image inside of there. Probably show an example of that in a bit. So this is Hydra into P5. Here's a really minimal example of, I just have noise going out. That's what Hydra is. I turn it off. I tell P5 to be in the front. I say texture, go get what Hydra is doing. Again, the uppercase H in Hi5 stands for the Hydra canvas. The uppercase P5 stands for your P5 canvas. So I'll point out this resource to you later, how you can find this whole README. It's also inside of Hi5 Live. This is the GitHub page for Hi5. And basically, that's the whole manual. You don't want to read it right now because I'm talking to you, but you can go deep and find out what all those things do here on the GitHub. Or when you click About, there's a little shortcut. The whole README is in here as well. So you can also jump and see, like, why are we using get? And then there's that get with the texture name that you want to call it. And here's, so I'm P5 telling it to be in front. I'm saying no stroke, rotate, orbit control, texture, here's a sphere. And so I'm getting my Hydra texture on a sphere. And then I can, before I go to that example, I show you the 4 examples. That was always a request from students. Like, I love one Hydra sketch, I love a second one. How could I have multiple? And then what I thought of doing, I'm going to turn on Hydra and say P5 toggle 0. This is Hydra, has 4 outputs. It took me a while when playing with Hydra to figure that out or to understand how that worked. This is my first output, my second output, my third output, my fourth output. Or when you put it in render without selecting one of them, you get your 2x2 overview of outputs. So Hydra is amazing that it's always had 4 inputs and 4 outputs, and you just have to specify which output you're sending your stuff to. So here I'm sending out to 4 outputs. And then what I also realized in conversation while I was making Hi5, I was on the Discord for Hydra and was asking about what's the best way to grab these different textures. And then it was also in conversation with Olivia and a few others that were in the chat about what about just grabbing this whole overview and then subdividing it. And then I realized, oh man, that makes perfect sense. I could just keep Hydra in render mode. Ideally be using a pixel density that's higher, so it's really sharp, but there I was on 0.5 just to be nice to people's computer, but I'll go back to 2. And I can take this whole canvas with the 2x2 and then subdivide it into these 4 sections and produce 4 separate layers so that you can use all 4 of those textures inside of P5. And so what we do is we keep that render mode on. And then instead of saying h.get, we say h.render. And what that does is it produces 4 values, h0, h1, h2, h3. And now I'll turn P5 back on. And now I can see I'm applying that texture to that torus, and that texture to that torus, and that texture to that torus, and that texture to that torus, because I'm just saying, hey, use each of those different textures. And it's so nice. Then I can super quickly go here and say dot modulate by an oscillator. And now that thing is kind of wobbly. And this dot colorama, is that going to work? There we go. And gradient dot modulate noise 5.5. That doesn't do a whole lot. Modulate scale something. So I'm playing with all those different textures, passing them into P5. So this dot render, I can hear my fan going, it's super happy. Warning, we have 2 textures going. So again, dot get just grabs whatever Hydra is doing. Dot render subdivides it into different pieces, which you can also play with when only showing one sketch. You could grab 4 different sections of that one sketch just to be like do weird stuff. For those who are really comfortable with like arrays and loops, it also produces the values as an array of textures. So H index 0 to 3, and this is nice because then you can just loop through those textures. When you're into arrays and loops, this is a much faster way to access those different textures. And then what gets super fun and blows my mind every time I play with it is doing 2 passes. So here I'm starting with this, and I'm making a Hydra texture, putting it into P5, and then I say, let's send P5 out to another Hydra. And so basically we can create multiple instances of Hy5. So here I have one instance of Hydra, which is hidden. It's just noise. I load it as a texture on a sphere in P5. And am I even hiding P5? Nope, P5 is visible. And then I'm making a second Hy5 Hydra, and I give it a custom name, how to talk to it. I tell it to have a sharp pixel density, a z-index of 2, because if I don't give it 2, and I send it in the background there, we can see that's my P5 flat, and it's in the background. But if I put it on top, and I say, hey, you go grab what P5 is doing, let's do some modulate scale, I get like crazy faux 3D. And this is what's nuts, is it's actually flat, but it's an optical illusion that makes it look like crazy shader 3D morphing of shapes. If I change it from maybe not scale, but just modulate, it's a little less 3D. It kind of looks like planet. Less intense or more intense. Yeah, so it's like this post processing of Hydra. You could basically do as many passes as you want. I forgot to mention one of my favorite features of Hy5 is this logo, splitting that emoji apart. I don't know how big I can make my screen to show it. Because why is it called Hy5? Hydra and P5 are going like this and getting the best of both of those worlds. And I stole the high and the 5, and that's why it's called Hy5. And so I was building this tool, making like this mini editor. I was talking about it earlier. I'll just show you what is noise scale. That was just testing something out. And just for those, if you're using Hy5 live, after I made the tool, I was using it often for live coding because it's just so minimal. There's no unnecessary code visible. But you have to remember, when you make sketches and save sketches here, they are just templates to then riff off of in the future. Turn off some of the code and just show you what's happening. And it shows me it's no longer on that sketch. It's not green anymore. But if I click on it again, it comes back to that sketch. So I'm gonna also trash some of it, and it tells me, hey, you are not on any sketch anymore because it's not the same. And I can click and go back to it. And so if I decide like, wait a minute, I really didn't want the mask to be part of the sketch, then what I could do is click on it and edit it and turn off the mask and say save and close. Or I could also hit close and load. And so now that is the template. I'll go back to some other sketch and go back, and now it's without that mask attached. So it's super confusing. I don't know if anyone knows how this really works unless you really read the manual close. But it was just to try something different out. Because in P5 Live, it's really about, hey, you save your sketch, and if I make any changes, it saved it in the sketch. I turn that off and I reload the page, it's saved. It's always a write over. But here, it's really just a starting point template. So it can be really nice also for live coding performances. If you're not doing from scratch, you can build yourself some little starting boilerplates, and then with as much or little code as you want, and then riff and go in a weird direction, and then just start over from that same point. Can be quite interesting. Here, instead, I put the Hydra references inside of this tool. And also in Hi5, we can use both audio input from Hydra or from P5. There's examples for how to use both. And of course, we can run offline. Just quickly open up some sketch I had. So there's like demos that are built into Hi5 Live just to demonstrate how you hook the things up to each other, and then you make your own things. Just checking out a couple things. Always allow. Whoa, what was I doing there? Weird stuff with the mic. Bop, 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 bop. Okay. I'll go to a new. So Hi5 is Hi5 Live is like a really minimal, nice editor. So at times I loved live coding in this because like you just work super fast and nothing is in the way and you just code quick. And then I started realizing I was also talking to Felix Roos of Strudel, and I had given a presentation about Hi5 Live here in Basel during our Basel Codes. And he mentioned like, why are you making another editor? You have P5 Live, which has all these features in it. Why not just build it into that somehow? Or like, to me, it was really to test out different things. I had also learned better ways of doing things that I implemented in Hi5 Live, but I realized this should just be a library of its own, that I could do both. I could keep this little editor that's just like a mini sandbox, and then I could separate Hi5 to be its own library so that when you want to use it, you load Hydra, you load P5, and then you load Hi5, and then it's building the bridge. So you don't have to use it in any of these environments. Hi5 Live is so that you can jam really fast in a minimal way. P5 Live lets you do co-coding and record your process and really save all your sketches and clone your sketches. And then as a library, you could just build a tool or a website that's using the two things together. So that's what I do now in P5 Live. Let me move this out of the way and click on a new and show you the same sketches are here in Hi5. So this is all the same demos that you find in Hi5 Live, and I just point out the difference if you use it in P5 Live. The main thing is you have to load the libraries at the top of P5 Live. You have to say, I want to load Hydra. I load it online and offline. And then I need to load Hi5, and I'm loading it both online from my GitHub, and it's built into P5 Live. It's loading it from the offline folder. Then I need to put all my sort of Hi5 Hydra code inside this sandbox I mentioned before. That way, when I make changes here, if I turn off the modulate, it's not causing a hard recompile because it was some global change. If I write code out here and say, hello world in the global space, it triggered a hard recompile because it's expecting that you're writing some variable that's like hello world, and it has to do a recompile to know about that variable. But when I do stuff in the sandbox space, it just executes this block of code. We can even see it for a split second, it turns blue. And this is also, since I made Hi5, it changes a bit that if I do stuff here, it compiles the block of code until there's a break. So this can get a little trippy, but also cool that I could change what's happening. I could do like down here, source so dot modulate oscillator dot out. And now this block overrid this block, but I could also just hit compile on that block or compile on that block. So it's like your line spacing makes a big difference. That you can see the blue is a block. This is a block. If you put a return in there, that doesn't work anymore because it can't find the out. So it's super important to keep like a whole Hydra block together. So now it's really clean that I can just kind of hot swap which one I want manipulating stuff. And so I'm doing the stuff inside of P5 Live. The only thing you have to do different in P5 Live is load the libraries and work within sandbox, and it just has to be the word sandbox. You don't even need start. But as a comment, P5 Live is searching for 2 comments called sandbox, and then that's like your playground for any global code that should just execute without messing with P5. Whenever things aren't working, if you somehow start, I'll show you from a new sketch. Actually, I'll come back real quick. Just so you know, in P5 Live, you can never overwrite the demos. So if I'm starting from this demo and I want to change stuff, watch what happens when I change the size of circle. I change it to 300. It clones the demo. So it's like read only. I can't screw anything up. No fill, stroke, white, whoops. And let's have a background that fades out a bit. So now I'm just doing like a stroke version of that circle. And I cloned it automatically. So it's read only for the demos. And what I wanted to say was, I lost my train. I was going to talk about the differences in both. Oh no, where was I going to go? Wait, I want to go back to a new and go back down to a demo. There is the 4 up. Oh, I was going to say something about in P5 Live using it. Yeah, I think one of the main reasons I'm using it in P5 Live more often now is because it's so much easier to save the sketches. I love recoding and capturing what I'm doing or co-coding with others. There's all kinds of fancy things now too that in P5 Live, you can also have visuals only pop up or the code pop up. I can't really demonstrate it with my code share right now. But what it essentially lets you do is it pops open separate windows for your code and your visuals, and it also lets you pick which canvas you want to see in that other window. And that could be nice if you're on multiple displays and you're in a place where maybe they don't want to see the code, which kind of sucks if that's the case. But sometimes you just want the visuals displayed, and then you can show just those off on the side. Was there another thing? Oh, that's what I wanted to show you. I remember now. I start from a new sketch. So I press Control N. I'm just going to make a simple little thing like I love to just do circles that follow my mouse. It's like just quick, are things working? So I have just a really simple sketch. I'll add a background that fades just so it's not leaving too much trace. And then I have little shortcuts built into P5 Live that you can learn about in the README. There's like huge, long README here. But I have some ACE snippets. I found it right away. The ACE snippets, there's also from the top here, I installed a little jump in the, I don't know if it's very obvious, but this top bar, you can jump to sections. And I have some ACE editor built-in snippets. And so what those do is they just load a block of code directly in the editor. So at the top, I can type HY5 tab, and then it loaded the libraries. It's ready to start grabbing P5 if I want it to. And so I can activate that line of code. And then I say, let's use it. Source so.out.modulate noise. But nothing is happening yet. And that can be super frustrating. And it's kind of just like a order of operations. Has this line of code happened yet? And sometimes that very first time I say I want to start using HY5, I just have to do Control Shift Enter to do one hard recompile. That's at the very top of the about is whenever you're typing, it does a soft compile for you. And if you hold down Control Shift Enter, it does a hard recompile. And so that like forces the whole iframe to reload. And sometimes I have to do that just to make sure things were ordered in the right event, that like HY5 got loaded with Hydra. It's just kind of funky. But then everything works from there on. And then you can start playing. That can do modulate scale and do Voronoi, and start breaking my P5 sketch. I'm still seeing the P5 sketch under it. So I could say p5.hide, and now I just have the Hydra sketch and say I want a lot of Voronoi, and start jamming after that. I think that's a pretty good dive into Hi5 and Hi5 Live. And you asked me to say something about, Ambika mentioned something about the P5 Live Award.
Yeah,
Shameless.
we'd love to know because particularly with our fellowship here with Godrej, it's like looking at technology and code and how it's part of design. And this might be really lovely for us to get a sense of what that means.
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, P5 Live I made as like a passion project. And it was like my first baby before having a baby, and just gave it all kinds of free time, evenings, weekends, just building it up. And it's one of those things where like you could apply for funding or try to apply for different things to support it. I did try to do some grants during the pandemic for live streaming and such, but they didn't work out. Later with institute school funding, I kind of extended what co-coding is into something called co-coding classroom. But P5 Live kind of was just like this passion project. And then I applied a couple times. It took a few tries to the Swiss Design Awards. The Swiss Design Awards takes place during Art Basel. And here in Basel, there's a big art fair, and there's the Swiss Design Awards and the Swiss Art Awards. And with these kinds of projects, it's always a question which to apply for. Is it design? Is it art? Depends how you're using it. This is now the new year. It was part of the previous year, last year. And I applied to, since a couple years, they started a section for media and interaction design. And that's really great that because design is a really broad term. It's graphic design / visual communication, fashion design, product design, many different forms of design. And then they started a separate section for media and interaction. And that's where it's this really interesting gray zone between art and design, because it can be applied or less applied and be using technology, code. And so I applied for that. And let me find SDA. Oops, I have to go to my offline version because it's a big video. SDA. You can also search in your code when you have lots of sketches. I have like 2,000 sketches in mine, and it gets impossible to find stuff. I'm working on a thing, XY scope. I can find sketches by name if you give your stuff good names, or if you want to find a time that you used the word toggle in a sketch, I can search by code, and then it quickly finds all the sketch codes where I had toggle, and those are probably Hi5 sketches. Or I could go find, when did I use WebGL? And then I find all my P5 sketches that are using WebGL, because that was like the full text search. So you toggle this on to do full text search. But I wanted to find SDA, and it is, I think, this one. This is a little walkthrough of I can't pause it, unfortunately. This was the installation I made at the Swiss Design Awards. And so you printed out like a little map of the booth. This was P5 Live in the wild. And that's where I also got lots of amazing sketches from the community over there. People sent me videos. I went and scraped TikTok and Instagram and YouTube for videos. I'm gonna start it over. Start the sketch over just to start that moment again. It was super important for me to show how P5 Live is being used in the wild. So there's people who make YouTube demos. There's people who do remote meditation. There's people who do live coding performances and tutorials. There's all different ways people are using it in the wild. And so this was like a little screen that went through, 100+ clips of people using it in different ways. On the other side was, for 1 year during the pandemic, I did just 1-hour jams on YouTube. It's called P5 Live Sessions, because I love doing that, just playing for an hour and having no idea where it will go. And so I showed those. You could jump through them. On the left side was a co-coding session. Anyone could jump in and kind of be part of the exhibit. In the middle was a recoding performance that used the speakers, the sound system in there, playing radio, to walk through like a performance captured, kind of like a player piano. And on the right side was a sandbox. And so anyone could just play. And in the end, I was really surprised. A lot of people wanted to play and just jam and play with the demos. And it was great. People were more into testing it out than I thought they would be. In the recoding, I tried to set it up. There's a mode called cat mode where you just type any key and it goes to the next key that's being recorded. And it somehow had bugs because I think kids can get on the computer and they just keyboard smash and learn how to break stuff super fast. I'm sure my kid also contributed to that they're crazy hackers. And so in the end, I had to kind of disable the keyboard and just let it perform on its own. It's in May, there's the International Live Coding Conference taking place in Barcelona. And there I will have one installation of a recoding performance that uses the webcam. And it will be just like, it'll look like a ghost in the machine. Someone's coding and it's changing over time in real time as I recorded it. And it'll be using the camera. And so it's like different than a video recording because it's the actual person standing in front of the computer, their image being changed. So this was P5 Live as an installation, and I was fortunate enough that it won one of the awards for the Swiss Design Awards Media Interaction. So that was a super nice validation in a way of making such a big passion project, showing its use, that it has community, and that it's design. It's used for art. It keeps me from making a lot of my own art and design because it's easy to get obsessed on the tool to make stuff. But then that's also super fun while making these tools is like, you make the tool to make a thing, but then you get lost making the tool. And then sometimes you're trying to work on the tool, but then you get lost playing with the tool. And every time I worked on HY5 Live, I would get lost for like an hour just playing with what was possible, mixing the things together, even though I wanted to add a feature. And so it just becomes really fun making your own tools. I became obsessed since years, and I'm fortunate that it took about 7 years of diving into creative coding until I could finally reach a level I could start making contributions with libraries and start making tools, and then turned a lot of my practice into tool making. For some quick shameless promotion, if you want to do deeper dives with me in these tools, there is No School Nevers in summer in July. From June 30th to July 13th is an amazing alternative school that takes place in Nevers, France. And I'll give a one-day workshop there on live coding. Last year it was on HY5 specifically. This year it might be on live coding oscilloscopes. I'm still on the fence of which topic we'll get into. But then I also give a performance there. There's a great live coding festival performances that happen at the end of the weekend. I always perform with Josh Elena. And and so that's a chance to do a one-day dive on this. And if you want to go even deeper, baselsummerworkshops.ch. I can also pass you these links later. I hope that domain is working. Otherwise, I need to see what's going on. fhnw.ch/hageka. Let me quickly get to our summer workshop. Oh, there it is. It just took a second. Here in Basel at our institute, we have summer workshops taking place, and I give a one-week workshop in June, end of June, on generative design. And this is where we do a deep dive on exactly this, Hydra and P5, and we build our own tools. We dive into what Hydra can do, what P5 can do, what HY5, the combination of them can do, and we build our own tools. And so this, you can find generative design in June. And I think I stopped my share, and I'm super happy for your attention, listening, and happy for Q&A.
Thank you. That was so amazing. If people are interested in showing their faces on the live stream, whoever's in the meet, you're most welcome to. and you can show how bright you're looking after this wonderful session with Ted. And then whoever's got questions, maybe you want to raise your hands. I don't know, virtually I meant. I think everybody's a bit speechless.
Yeah, I definitely thought my brain grew 2 sizes bigger. So many things we had no idea about. Thanks.
I'll also
Yeah, I mean,
just mention
yeah.
in YouTube if they have questions as well. Please
Yeah.
chat.
Yeah, I'm happy for any questions in the chat too, if people don't want to use their mics. Yeah, and I also, I of course I made for a little while P5 Live video walkthrough tutorials that are on my YouTube page. You find under new and newer media. I can pass links to. But I also am super overdue making tutorial videos for Hi5 because it's like you make the tool and then you release it. I released it a Valentine's Day ago in 24, and then I had the Swiss Design Awards, and then I jumped to the next thing and got into XY scope for the browser. And so I'm overdue for making videos to like walk through these bits and pieces in Hi5, but that's why I'm also excited to have done this show and tell. And it can also, I think I ran fast through it. It was a speed run, but then to jump back slowly and be like, okay, that's how those bits and pieces work.
Yeah.
But please, questions. I love questions.
Okay, mine is a bit technical, but I just wanted to know those A snippet things, they work in Hi5 too, or only on P5 Live?
Yep. That reminds me 2 things to show. I go back, I show my screen again for a minute. In Hi5 Live, do I have snippets built into here? Which snippets do I don't think I put many. There's 2 kinds of snippets actually. There are, it's a little crazy. There are Hi5. No, I don't have snippets in Hi5 Live's editor. But in P5 Live, there's 2 kinds of snippets. Oh, but I do have snippets in here. I totally do. If you type P5, you get the P5 sketch. So like when you make a new sketch in Hi5 Live, it's really like drag and drop a sketch, P5 or Hi5, or Hydra. No, that's not a thing. P5 is a thing just to get the basic template where it's already sending the stuff off, and then it suggests, hey, use this to go get it into Hydra. In P5 Live, I have a whole lot of, I'll jump to those snippets, this ACE snippets. There I put a bunch, libs, I could type libs and get the libs to show up. I could do Hydra only, I could add sandbox, a few more things. So this is really useful, whoops. If I need libs, then it's ready for adding libraries. If I wanted a sandbox, it just adds my little sandbox for me. But something else that's waiting for you in P5 Live is called the snippets. It's something else, different snippets. It's launch the editor. And these are snippets made for P5, basically, that you can put global code in the top, in your setup, in your draw, and in the bottom. And it comes with a few, like that's for adding audio reactivity. I have one built in for loading a font, because you need a font when you're in 3D. For using OSC for sound control, open sound control for MIDI. So there's a number of built-in ones. And then on my offline, I'll just show what it's like here. If I open up that editor, I have a bunch of custom ones. So like I'm playing with XY scope, I just build like the bits of code that have to go in the very top of your code, in the setup, in the bottom, in the draw. Let me pick one. This walker was a fun one, just for I found a library that has a walker, and then this is kind of fun to add. And so you can apply it after you've edited it, or Control-Shift-S opens up this little quick apply, and I apply it, and now I have this walker. It's this amazing library that just has motion of somebody walking, and it's really fun to play with. And instead, that could be like bigger circles, or they could be a rectangle, just weird stuff to play with. And so this is a snippet that added this code in the global top, what I needed in the draw, and these are called P5 live snippets. And that's Option Shift S for the editor, or Control Shift S for the quick apply. And that way you're live coding, you just need to quickly get a couple lines of code in there. I'm gonna try to work on having it like ghost type that really fast, so that it's just like appears, not like it just it looks like you typed it really fast instead of it just appearing, because it kind of feels like cheating when too much code appears at once.
So do you like to live code from scratch, or like some of us, we like to prepare, but everyone has their own. So what is your preference?
Yeah, totally. I very much prefer to live code from scratch, because I think it's especially nice for the audience to be part of the whole process. And so I love this from Mexico City. I think it came this from scratch sets where they do like 9-minute performances from nothing, building it up, and then maybe at 9 minutes you it's over, go to the next. But it's also a huge challenge, because it really makes you remember your stuff, or you need a cheat sheet, or but that's also how I like to sketch when I have free time and want to jam. I start from nothing and have a rough idea what I want to try to do, and then see where it goes. And but I'm on the fence also, because I'll give 2 performances in May for oscilloscopes, and I'm not yet sure how much I can do it from scratch, or how much I'll need to already have there, especially if I want to use like the webcam involved, or hand tracking. Like some of these things just require 5 to 10 lines of code that there's no way I want to, like it's wasting everyone's time if I type that out and have a typo. And that's where the snippets come in. It's like, I am live coding from scratch and I need this. And that's where I want to make this and this be smoother for the audience, that it like appears instead of like, hey, what just happened? Too much code just appeared. So in general, I really love to do it from scratch, and at times you need more code, and that's why snippets are there. But I have no problem with scene performances where a lot of code is there and things get turned on and off. It's just, I think it's tougher for the audience to know what is doing what if they don't see the whole process unfold.
Okay, I'll ask you 2 very magazine-like questions. Any 2 live coders whom you think we should all like look at their work, and then any 2 different kind of creative artists whom you find inspiring, whom we can also like, that'll give us a sense of, okay, this is where you're coming from.
Yeah. Yeah, live coders. I think from visual side, I've always seen, I'm gonna butcher names. I'm horrible with names. I'm so good with like handles or faces, but names are bad. Char Styles, I don't know how to say their name. They're doing shader things, and I see their work from afar since years. And yeah, I think there's going to be some overlap at some events, and so I'm really curious to see their performance live. It's one of those things I've been seeing from the interwebs. On the music side, like there's so many, so it's also tricky to pick one. But someone I've enjoyed seeing performances more and more from is Felix Roos of Strudel, which is interesting, having like a jazz background and a code background, and is making these tools. Strudel is like the web port of tidal cycles, so it's really fast to get into that environment. And we've collaborated a couple of times over the last year, and just super interested to see how many different directions they can go from a few lines of code, and with music theory background. Amazing to watch it happen. But there's so many. It's every time this international code conference for live coding is amazing. I've only been once before in Utrecht, and it was such a great gathering of visualists and musicians, and every performance was inspiring in different ways.
Anyone has anything else? And then we can maybe let it go. I don't think Avni and I want to let you go.
Yeah, I don't have any question. I'm so inspired right now and mind blown. Like, like I'm so inspired that I've decided, like right now I've decided I'm gonna do a challenge and I'm gonna do a lot of creative coding and start posting on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't stress enough the importance of lots of little dumb sketches.
Mm-hmm.
I'm testing the limits of the browser in my P5 Live offline, because technically this local storage is only supposed to have like 5 to 10 megabytes, and I'm pushing that limit from how many sketches I have. So I'm also slowly going to need to figure out little tools in P5 Live so you can filter and find the big sketches that are maybe clones of sketches to get rid of. But it's like so many of my sketches are like just testing a mini thing and learning from it, and then trying another mini thing. And so I think it's so important just to make lots and lots and lots and lots and lots, and capture. Yeah, you can easily press Control S whenever you're in P5 Live. You just press Control S. You need to change the shortcut maybe if it's on Windows, and it saves a PNG of what you see and the code where it's at. And that way you can keep little snapshots of what you're making. And then you have a picture and the code for what went to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a question that's going to be typed out or asked. Okay, here we go.
There's one above as well from Abhishek, right above Char's link as well. For Code Drift, we take inspiration from cities we are in. What are your favorite sources of inspiration for live coded sets? And I'll read both so you can answer them. And the second is from Anushka. You said that building Hi5 started with an editor. So I'm wondering how much of the final tool is the editor? And did it make your life much easier when making Hi5 or difficult? Nice ones. Both.
Great. Yeah, inspiration for live coded sets. They start super simple. It usually starts with 1, maybe 2 functions where I know that's what I want to play with. Usually it's a shape. Like I tend to make more abstract live coded sets. I'm not so often using imagery. I love just a circle and then seeing where can it go, how weird can it get from a circle, just as a starting point. But then I know there's like 1 or 2 functions I want to throw in there. And then I see how much mileage can I get with a few things. So I also for live coding usually don't get as complex as if I'm just doing it and no one's watching, because it should always be working. But I try to just have a couple things, and then I just know those are the 3 functions I want to use, and then see what happens from there. And when making the editor and the final tool, did it make your life easier when making Hi5 or difficult? It made me question tons of things I did in P5 Live, because I made this like 4 years later, 5 years later. And I realized how many bad decisions I made while making P5 Live, because I was also a younger, less experienced coder when I was doing it. So I learned so much while making P5 Live that I didn't know before. And I made lots of bad decisions along the way that work. It's a crazy, people have said like it set a record for how much code is in one file, because I also wanted everything to be in one big, easy for me to edit file. So it's super ugly for someone who wants to touch it or change it, but that's okay with me, because it's like poetry in a way, just a weird way I put it together. And in Hi5, I tried to do things a little better and redid the file system in a much better object-oriented way. And so it was also just a sandbox to learn like what are better ways to do things now than what I did then. And then it also ended up feeding its way into P5 Live. I decided things for making the audio all behind the scenes for Hi5 Live, and decided, hey, that could also be in P5 Live. And so for a while I was obsessed with that editor, and then I go back to that editor, and I think it didn't make anything more difficult. It just opened up options, and then you get a little FOMO of like, which one should I be using? Is it this one or that one? What depends what I want to do. How do I want to record it or not? Yeah.
Cool. I think we'll wrap up now. Nanditi, you want to do the honors?
I think honors are already done at the start. But yeah, I think mainly thanks everyone for joining, and Ted for being here. and for the fellowship for allowing us to do this, and some of our contributors who have supported us, the code.yatra project. So yes, glad this happened, and we're going to do more of these. And thanks, Ted. This was absolutely amazing, and we're going to rewatch this 2-3 times more.
Thanks, Ted.